Yep.
Let's begin. Let's
They're in.
Open this Risk and Assurance Committee meeting, and let's start with the council brief. Almighty God, as members of the Rangitik District Council, we give thanks for all the good thing our district and the advantage we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities in the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen. Thank you. Are there any apologies? No apologies. Public forum? No public forum. Are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared? None. Confirmation of order of business. I see that this is a relatively shortish agenda, and I know we've got a workshop scheduled for 12:30 to 1:30 after the meeting. My suggestion is, if we finish this meeting early, which is my intention, that we actually start the workshop, grab some lunch, and carry on with the intention of being finished by 1 o'clock. If it was 1:30, then I will have to be. I don't want any hold-ups on the way to the airport. I'll miss the flight, and all the flights are booked. So, all right, thank you for that. I don't see any need to change the agenda items. Thank you. The first item, 6.1, our confirmation of our minutes held 20th of March. Take those as read. Are there any corrections required?
The clarification.
Yep.
9.13, Marton Rauha, it's got here that there was discussion regarding Councillor Loudon being conflicted with this item, but it's left open-ended. There's no sort of resolution to that discussion. There was a here you raised an opinion on that at the time.
That was on
9.13,
page 12. Yep.
I think the ruling was he wasn't conflicted
Yeah.
because of it being just an
information
receiving,
report.
yes.
Yep.
That was declared at the meeting.
That was declared at the meeting.
yeah,
Yep.
it's not in the minutes.
I think
So
we can
it's
add
left
to it.
open-ended.
Okay. So if the committee are happy that we just
Add.
make that modification, okay, thank you. With that modification, we go back to the recommendation? Therefore, the recommendation is as amended. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Day. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Vicky. Councillor Vicky. All those in favour, please say aye. Against carried. 7.1 follow-up items. This is
I think it just
for
there is,
information.
yes, they're assigned to a number of staff. So if anything further is required, there's staff in the room that can answer.
Okay. Any questions on that?
There was only one that item number 6 is to the shared services. I think that has been here and is completed. We have had that discussion, or the council's had that discussion on shared services in workshops. So that although it is in progress, I think that's completed. I don't think there's any more work that we could do on that. And it's about to happen on the 1st of July.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh,
sorry, just wondering, I mean, sure, we've spoken about it in workshops. When is that actually going out to the public? And yeah.
Yeah, it's been in the CE's report for the last few months in the open agenda, just giving an update on it. So it's all out in the open.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I agree. That was the only thing that I'd highlighted in this section, and I could see that's been effectively closed. The only thing we have highlighted that is happening, the only issues have been a transfer of staff, and that's an operational matter in itself.
Okay, all right, thank you. So go back to the recommendation. We're actually receiving the item, and can I make a suggestion to the resolution that we note the closed items? I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Fee, all those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Next item, Chair's report is attached. Maybe in terms of discussion on this, maybe we actually have the discussion on this as part of our item 9.1, risk management. And the mayor actually, maybe you can do it, maybe people can multitask, is not staff, but councillors, maybe you want to think about what's keeping you awake in terms of your, maybe, I wouldn't say the top 10, but maybe top 2 or 3, and we see how they all align as part of management, because I think that's really important. This is 9.1 is the staff's risks. There might be governance ones, and we need to sort of get them sort of joining up, so to speak, and see where the differences are to move forward. And that's probably the big item we want to talk about it towards the end of the agenda. Any comments on my report?
No, thank you. Thank you for noting that conversation. It was interesting to me that I looked at this and thought, well, I'll jot down what things I worry about in terms of the organisation. The governors may have individual ideas around the room that differ to mine.
Yeah.
And we need to be aware of them. We're all coming up with the number one issue that we don't have McDonald's in town. It's a worry, but
I thought that was a well, that's probably a risk, because to me, as risk is about uncertainty over objectives, and it can be positive and negative. I would actually say that's a positive, your worship. Other people might disagree. Right? Any other comments? Do I have a mover that we receive the chair's report?
happy to move.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Fee, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. Reports for information, health, safety and wellbeing. Thank you, Sharon. Item 9.1, page 18. Take your report as read. Are there any key highlights you want to bring to the committee's attention?
This is our standard health, safety and wellbeing update with 3 of the dashboards attached, and I'm really happy to take the report as read and take any questions.
Are there any questions? It's a really good report. Any comments? I mean, I've got one comment here, and it's not obvious. The question I have that keeps me awake at night, right, is where we have a contractor that isn't complying with their own health and safety stuff. How I know you know that the manager might be aware of it, but how do we know as governors that you're actually monitoring that contractor?
It's a tough question.
I know.
In the sense that where do we draw the line? Because that's a very detailed operational question.
Yeah, it is.
And really what we want to report to council is by exception.
Yeah.
When there's a problem, I think we should mention that definitely.
Yeah.
But the way we check and audit and be sure that they comply, I think that's operational.
Yeah, I don't disagree. That's operational, but what I would give me some comfort, right, is just to say is we've had 5. No, we've reviewed health and safety plans. We've been out on site of over the last 3 months, 15 contractors or 5 contractors. We found no exceptions, right? Don't want to know who they are.
Yeah.
That's not our job. And then to say, oh, we've got one that has a minor that needs to lift their game and we're monitoring them. That's all we need to know, because our job is to gain assurance that that's actually happening. Right, I totally agree, it's an operational matter.
Mm.
But our job is to, hence the name assurance, is to get that assurance that those things are happening, because to me, that's one of the things that keeps me awake at night as an independent. I've actually had one council that they had fatality with one of their contractors. And they actually do that, and the committee does reports. So I was actually, well, I heard about it, right? It would actually gave me some comfort that yes, that was a one-off, and there were other processes. Sharon, whether you want to comment on that?
Yes, certainly. You'll see in the health, safety and wellbeing work program highlights under 3.22. One of our focus areas over the past few months has been just that review and development of our health and safety management practices for contractors.
Yep.
That includes our far more focus on the review and the on-site safety checks.
Yep.
Beyond simply what is detailed in the site-wise system.
Yeah.
So that is very near completion, very near to be ready to be implemented. So we will be able to report on just that.
So you don't have a problem in reporting that? There's not, that's part of your plan, is to report to this committee?
Well, I think we can give you assurance that we have a process in
Yeah.
place to check that.
Yeah.
And certainly if there were any exceptions or areas of significant concern that we believed presented a risk that this committee needed to know about.
Yeah.
we need to report on that.
Yeah.
But if everything's everything's normal, but I think it's the assurance to this committee that we have a process in place to check that.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Simon?
Just on that, if you may, if a contractor is in breach of the contract through health and safety, for example, and you action that, do we hear about that within this?
Absolutely, that's what Sharon's talking about,
Yeah.
is that we report that by exception.
Yeah.
But if honestly, what your councillor Philip, but Chair Philip was talking about is one of the worst nightmares for any council is to have a fatality in there. So any issue like that would be lickety split in front of here, because nobody wants to be fronting that issue.
Yeah.
I think they would apply to any of the major works as well.
I mean, in recent times, we've had exactly that situation for this council. We had a contractor fatality while working on our network.
Yeah.
And that was very recent. And there was a full investigation as part and parcel of that. And council were informed about the repercussions of that. It was quite some time ago. There was one company that had, as part of their health and safety review, that if there was an accident involving any one of their vehicles, then the drivers are automatically breath tested and analysed, and he failed. And that led to a possible suspension against the company. We weren't told the company. I didn't know who it was, which company it was. So these things are actively followed through.
Yeah, it's more pre-event. Now, why I'm raising this is Auckland Council a number of years ago had an event where one of their contractors had unsafe vehicles. The council they said, but we run all these checks on our vehicles, right? Council relied on their word, but they never had a program for actually reviewing any of their contractors to make sure that they were actually complying with what they said. And for that princely mistake, they got, there was a loss of life, which is to me is the tragedy, but also Auckland Council got fined, and in the media, which is never, which is an added issue. And that to me is what I'm trying to avoid. Right? Yes, and just getting that assurance, right? As I said, I don't want to know the names. I don't, but I want that to know that you've actually undertaken 5 audits, 5 past flying colours. That to me is a really good news story. Councillor Simon.
How often do you go through that process, Jeremy, when you audit the companies?
Well, the
process?
the new process has only just been introduced, but essentially every contractor we work with has a audit as such when they become a member of Sitewise, and then there are contractor managers are doing safety checks,
Yeah.
on-site safety checks.
Yeah.
And we would become involved if those safety checks revealed that there was something happening that wasn't up to safety standard.
So is that sort of like 3 monthly process? Is that a sort of, was that, you're just saying they're doing it, but how often would they do it? Is it once a year?
Oh, it's definitely more frequent than once a year, and it depends on the level of hazards that the contract presents. Some work that contractors do is very short term and it's low risk. Other is for a significant project, and all that would be usually detailed in the project plan and the contract plan, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I can answer that, Mr. Chair, if I may. The other thing is every site visit that we do, it's also our safety audit. So if I go on site, we then comply with their requirements, and we can see if it's in place, if it's done correctly. If anything looks out of place or not correct, we can stop work. So that would be kind of weekly that we're there. Depends on the job, but some of them are more than others. So there would be the contractor, and then would be our overview of that too.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say though, that this is a pragmatic one too, because if you think of the value that's been put on like some road control at the moment, and how much that is costing more than the actual work itself, is there is a pragmatic line that needs to be determined as to what is practical and not. But again, you'll find that every company is really reluctant to deviate from a level because of the implications of what happens if you go wrong. So it is a pragmatic balance, and I'm not sure we've got the roading one, we collectively, not only here, roading balance right. But you can imagine, should there be an accident, then that would be under scrutiny.
Sir Bill English made a very interesting comment around the road cone type dilemmas. And essentially the issue is, and I've raised it before this, around the standard has been written by the industry, including their own training. So they've created their own industry. However, Sir Bill made the comment that it was a significant issue for New Zealand and we should accept risk. But he said the solution to it is that local government engage people to write what they believe should be an appropriate standard and take it to government for adoption.
Yeah. My understanding is that, I'll probably get the words wrong, there is a standard that's been set for road.
Correct. But the point is it's been written by the industry that provides the service.
But at the moment, my understanding is that standard also currently applies to local authorities, and there is some changes coming where we can actually opt out of that and have our own standard. So we don't actually have to go to government. It's coming, right? And that to me adds risk, but may actually reduce risk as well, right? Because what worries me with the road cones is that we've got all these road cones in 30 k's where nothing is actually happening, so people come complacent. And when it is needs to be 30 k, people are doing 50 or 80 k because other sites have.
My previous mayor's report covered exactly that point.
Break mine sink a lot with full seldom, but you take your pick on that one. Right. Any other comments? Okay, so we've got a recommendation there that the health, safety and wellbeing report be received. Do I have a mover? Mayor Andy, seconded Councillor Simon. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Protected disclosure update. I don't think it requires much discussion. Take the report as read. You're happy to move? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Simon. All those in favour, please say aye. Privacy update 9.3. Again, take the report as read. Is there any further information?
No, just noting that you'll see there was one
Yeah.
minor privacy breach that wasn't considered to result in any kind of significant harm or likelihood of significant harm, and it was dealt with and resolved immediately as per our policy.
Okay. So, sorry, there was no requirement to report that because there was no significant harm. Yeah,
No requirement, it wasn't notified.
thank you. Yeah, it actually says on the top of the next page 30, I can read it, wouldn't highlight that. Do I, no questions? Do I have a mover for the recommendation? Sort of fee, second councillor Vicky, all those in favour, please say aye.
Right.
9.4. Risk Insurance Committee Work Programme. Page 31. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, standard report as you're all familiar with, pretty much much as a checklist as anything else to make sure that we go through a list of stuff that needs to be addressed. And there's nothing there that's behind schedule.
Thank you. I thought you might be putting something in here for the next meeting for your success to be.
I have a suggestion that I think the agenda should be expanded from here on.
See the landmine for you, if you follow it.
So, any questions, comments on the report? Yeah, Andy.
The only comment I'd make in this area is that the scenery that we operate in, or whatever the correct word is, by government is so rapidly changing that we need to make sure that the policies that we have around accountability, finance in particular, relate to the government legislation that we have at hand. Right. And I think probably there's a need for absolutely a review of the legislative changes and then reflecting it back in our responsibilities.
Mr. Chief Executive, do you want to comment on that one?
I 100% agree, but I have to say that at the moment, local government just has so much on its plate. Legislation is coming through in waves and submissions on them. You know, we're given down to 3 days to submit on them. So I'll absolutely take Mayor Andy's point, and yeah, it's hard to keep a pace off it, but I don't know whether we have a formal legislative review.
Yeah, I mean, some councils do that, right?
Yeah.
But that does take resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the risk, I think, is that it's not the submissions, right? Although it's a really important as well, but there's legislation that has changed that actually catches us out. And I don't know, Mr. Chief Executive, how we can get assurance that, you've got some, because it's, as you say, it's coming in waves. I would say it's coming in tidal waves. So you get sucked out and you get sucked back in again and thrown up on the beach.
I have been aware of other organisations that do a legislative compliance review from time to time, but maybe that's an appropriate time when, later on in this term, because the legislation's changing so much that, in fact, maybe at the end of the term, you'd actually do one to make sure you're complying with it. You'd be bumping into some as you go along, but that would capture it all.
Yeah. Councillor Dave?
I had similar thoughts on this. When you look at some of these dates, and it says, required to be reviewed every 6 years, and so these are all legislative, and some of them aren't. How is all this captured so that we're not left caught out? Who is that? Carol, is that in your space? Where's it captured in?
These ones are captured on what Dave's doing. I don't think these are the ones that aren't under issue, because we're aware of those. It's the ones that are changing majorly by legislation and government, and we're not aware of them. So they're not the ones that we've identified, because they're the ones that we're required to and prescribed to. I think the chair's referring, and Mayor Andy's referring to a whole range of other things that are happening, and we haven't got them captured in a form. But that legislative review is enormous. The amount of things that local government are involved with and the amount of acts and legislations is enormous, and that takes a hell of a lot of concerted resource to review.
Mayor Andy?
Not only legislation that changes, but in terms of, for instance, the shared service and the contractual agreement that we will have in place with the existing shared service, there'll be a whole lot of responsibilities that we take back on board. In terms of reporting, in terms of all sorts of responsibilities under those, and we need to make sure that we have captured them.
And I would actually go to more than just the policies, right? I'm aware of one council that had a couple of bylaws expire because it wasn't on a bylaw review program. And
We've had this.
yeah, right, so how do we actually, how do we get assurance that that's, right, we've got a program in
We
place for
do,
that?
we do, and we have a specific staff member that captures all our bylaws, all their review dates, and also those ones that, although they have a review by legislation, they're allowed to be
Yep.
carried out a bit later, and we report that through to policy and planning.
Right, okay.
And we also capture all the other submissions, as many as we
Yeah.
are aware of that government are putting out. And we provide that update to council through the chief executive's report as well as ELT,
Mhm.
looking at them each week. So we do try and capture as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, we had done that subject to death. Is there any other questions on the policy and bylaw review? What, I think, I want to spend a little bit of time talking 2.5, what it actually means for any subsequent reports to this committee in terms of the 3 water reforms. I would say at the moment it's a significantly high risk because of the degree of uncertainty, right? All we know is change will happen, so therefore it's certain. We're uncertain as to what it actually means because we don't know where and how and what. So how do we actually, just looking for chief executive, right? How do we look at the risks around those reforms going forward, what it actually means for the district?
Yeah, well, we're dealing with those on almost a daily
Yeah.
basis that goes through the council reporting system. So this committee, in my view, has the ability to have that snapshot at a point in time to do that. But honestly, there is just so much in this space that is unknown until, I think Andy and I talked about this morning, until the final bills are actually in place. We don't exactly know where that is, and there's still implications at that stage as to what stance to take. So
All I'm aware of is there's 1 or 2 groups going at pace on this, right? Without the legislation, which to me is a risk. Right? Mayor Andy?
That's one of my principal concerns as to where the sector's at. So the second tranche of legislation is up for submission right now. The time frame was something like a week. Because of the sheer workload, there are only 2 mayors that are submitting on it. And LGNZ, literally it was down to only a handful of days. This is number 2 of the 3 tranches of legislation. But in fact, number 2 is probably the crucial one because it sets a process in place, and number 3 will enforce it. And I don't think as a sector we understand exactly what is being proposed here. And we are asked to sign off some council plans within a year for the whole region. And my expectation is that government in tranche 3 will say, sorry, it's locked and loaded. Those plans include no consultation or no requirement to consult with iwi community. It's very, very far reaching and just sheer workload. And even the government listening to submissions, it now will be done only on Zoom, and there are only 20 parties or something like that submitting. That's huge concern.
I can only agree. I don't know whether that's submitting or wishing to be heard, but I also think that this is one that local government has to take a lead because all of the local authorities are struggling so much to cope with the day-to-day one. They need to take a lead, and maybe it needs to be divided into the metropolitan rural and regional, because each one of those have got different things applying as well. In terms of making progress, the groups within our region are talking, but there's no definitive answer coming out of there other than saying that for the region, financially, it doesn't seem to be much different, however that is structured. You have to go to the bigger, larger scale to actually make financial difference.
I think it's going to a larger scale to actually give the financial, like yes, you get economies of scale in terms of the back office, right? But some of the larger metropolitans and cities have got bigger issues than some of the regional issues, right? Which was when we started on this journey many years ago. It was assumed that the metropolitans were all hunky dory, and it was the smaller ones that were the problem children, right? Councillor Dave.
Yes, just absolutely endorsing what Mayor Andy has just said, and if it's not the number one thing keeps him awake at night, I would suggest it's very close to it. But I know that Mayor Andy and the Chief Executive have had lots of conversations, but for you, Chair, it's says a current area of concern, and we are in a risk and insurance meeting. This item sits in every workshop and meeting that council has. It is currently at the forefront of our minds across the board, and not just discussions here at this meeting, but pretty much every meeting or workshop, this one comes up somewhere along the line. So I think councillors sitting around the table do have a pretty good understanding of the area of concerns around this one. We all share them, I think.
My comment around this kaupapa is that we're pretty much in the same place that we were when it was first put in. So this, in my head, nothing's changed. So it was just another set of, there was another government that was in place that was putting this forward. Things have changed, and now there's another raft, and we weren't in any there wasn't any absolute knowing of where we were going then, and there still isn't. So it's just what it is. We've just got to find our way through it. In my head.
Councillor Simon.
I tend to agree with Councillor Hero. The impression was we chose to actually keep it within our long-term plan, and just assume that we were looking after Three Waters. It's just a matter of, are the figures the worst case scenario for us? And if they are, then any new entity could be a positive. That's the big question.
Councillor Andy, I'm sorry, Mayor Andy, no? That was almost a fake.
We won't be looking after the reality is where this legislation is happening is heading very closely back to where Labor had positioned it. Whakateo is quite correct. So we are charged regionally under the second tranche of coming up with a plan. It needs to be a regional plan, and that no council should be left out of, will be an enforced position, and it's referred to in the second bill. That plan goes to Wellington. No, sorry, it doesn't go to Wellington. First of all, there is no need for consultation. You can consult, and our opportunity would be the annual plan next year. But it has to be in place in Wellington, adopted by council within a year. And at that stage, the bill signifies that it effectively a commissioner type role looks over and approves the plan or can challenge it. And whereas the powers of challenge are not defined within the bill, they will be within the third bill. So there will be some sort of aggregated model, as I see it.
Yeah, well, it sort of needs to be aggregated, because to me is what I see this happening. You're going to actually have to duplicate your billing and all that sort of process in that new that new model, right? And that the only way you can get economies of scale with that billing is to aggregate, otherwise you're duplicating what the council's already doing, which is inefficient.
My point was that we have set aside money in our long-term plan for our three waters, and the point is that going to be enough in the new entity? Are we, you know, the costs will be taken away from us, but there's money set aside in the plan to contribute towards the new entity. Is that going to be enough? Will the new entity want more?
Sorry, through you, I think it is worth the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the infrastructure symposium, there were estimates given of the deficit and infrastructural spend, which largely across three waters, of $1 trillion. And they said then, if anywhere near that figure is needed, you can do it by rates, and gave a figure of rate increases which were horrific. You can do it by different processes, and it outlined the different options that councils will have available. But it absolutely reflected that councils will not be in the position to fund that infrastructure under present process. Very, very interesting, and I do have the presentation slides that I could send out to people.
That would be, I'd appreciate, I haven't seen this.
I just feel confident as a councillor that while this faffing around, our BAU is actually getting our systems continuing to a place where we should be. Yeah, so.
I mean, my biggest concern, right, is irrespective of who delivers that $1 trillion or whatever the number is, can New Zealand Inc. afford it? Right, everyone's saying is we're going to get all these efficiencies with this new entity. I don't think so, not in the short term. The other issue that hasn't been resolved yet is the ability for these new entities to have borrowings which are neither Crown nor local authority guarantees, and if they're not that, then basically their S&P level would be just above junk bonds without some form of guarantee. So your interest rate is likely to be, I think local authorities are sitting around 5.5 roughly now. They are likely to be north of 8. And if we're borrowing huge amounts of money, right, what's the interest cost going to be?
Oh, this is effectively the dilemma that Tauranga Council faced, and that's why the commissioners and their method of avoiding that was to rectify it off balance sheet by private partnerships and equity based ending. So
Yeah, it's a bit more complicated than that.
Yeah.
So you've actually got so Tauranga have done it, right? But there's some problems with that because they've actually created a special rate. So the debt's not on their balance sheet, but they've created a special rate, but not everyone is actually contributing to that rate as well. And that's, you've got some rather large commercial properties because of their underlying lease agreements. They don't have to actually pay. You've got a lot of work that was put into benefit a certain area that the ratepayers in that area aren't paying because of a mistake within the drafting, and there's no intention to fix that drafting. So there's no.
I'm not going to go into depth, but
So?
you're right. You're dead right.
Right, and it's the ratepayer who's actually paying for it, right? And which happens to be the same as the taxpayer, right? Same person. Councillor Picky, you had a comment?
I was just thinking that, in the kōrero that's been had, that as much as these are problems and everyone likes to tell us what the problems are, here's the problems, but it gives an opportunity for people to come up with solutions, and probably solutions that we may not have ever thought about. And so I'm just hopeful and confident that within this council, that we'll, if we don't have the have the brain power around it, that there's gonna be an opportunity out there, full opportunities to make things and do things that are gonna be for the benefit of us. So, I mean, I get what you're talking about. I understand what you're talking about, that what's happening out in the world with every other council that's out there, but they're a completely different beast than what this council is. And I'm interested in what's our solutions. So yes, we hear it every single day about, here's the problem, well, where's the solution? Instead of focusing on that, what do we need to do to fix the problem? So as long as we don't lose sight of that and keep moving towards it, in my head, then that has to be a positive thing.
Yep, sure. Yep.
That's a really good point, Kia ora. Comment that I can make is that by being forced into these discussions, there's more collaborative thinking than what has been going on before, whether it comes to anything or not. Some of those are being looked at and investigated. And also we've brought that expert Steve Kahn on, who's got a different view of some of that. And hopefully some of those will improve our efficiency with a different side to what we've been on the track with. But by being forced into those conversations, some good kōrero has been had in the region.
Okay, all right.
So what keeps me up a little bit is, okay, so 3 waters are gone, so where does that leave this little council and the amalgamation possibilities from there?
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah.
And I see you're looking to move on, Chair, but
Thank you, yeah.
I've heard collaboration, and I've heard New Zealand Inc. Well, I think if you take a bigger picture of it, perhaps New Zealand Inc. should be doing a little bit more collaborating in themselves and taking a somewhat more bigger, more practical picture of the issue that New Zealand Inc. has, because I don't see that we actually get that from our political leaders in central government. And I really do think that it's time that they started to actually really look at themselves, and I'm talking cross-party agreements for longer term infrastructure programs that can really deal with it, because passing it down to us doesn't appear to achieve a great deal without them addressing their own issues.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, I do want to conclude, right, that's very well for, and this is the bit that where I was hinting with New Zealand Inc. What we seem to have is that we seem to have a reaction that we need AA water, both wastewater, stormwater, as well as water supply. But you look at our other infrastructure, our schools, our state highways, our health, I would struggle that some of those are actually at E grade, and the only reason they're E because they don't give S, right? So to me, we seem to be spending all our time and money on 3 waters when there are other more important infrastructure, and I'm talking education, right? We seem to be not focusing on them, and I agree with you. We actually need, right, an infrastructure strategy for the whole country that looks at all our infrastructure. What's the level that we can afford? Who is the best? What are the best groups to deliver it, rather than this knee-jerk reaction that we're seeing swing from literally from left to right at both ends of the scale. So the question I have, Mr. Chief Executive, how do we want to then put that onto the work program going forward, which is where we're actually supposed to be talking about?
Well, as I said, is that between this meeting and the next meeting, there will be a lot of stuff that comes in front of council anyway, and the best that we can do is report it back to the next meeting.
Report back to the next meeting, and particularly around the risks that are emerging, rather than, I mean, at the moment, and they will change. Basically, the risks are changing, I would say, on a weekly basis. And that's part of the world that we're actually currently living in. Okay, so if that's been agreed, if we then go back to, what's my recommendation? Go on, it's on screen, that the work program be received. Do I have a mover? Councillor Day, second to Councillor Fee. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you for that good debate. Next item, 9.3 2025 insurance update.
Happy to report no major change to insurance claims during the year.
Thank you.
And just noting that we are putting together our insurance renewal and submissions.
So, right, thank you. Any questions, comments?
One very, very quick one, and interesting. How often is our insurance renewed? Are we on a yearly or?
Yes, as the insurance year goes November through to end of October.
It is yearly. Okay, thank you.
So what's the process, Mr. Toombs, in terms of insurance renewal?
Right, we have, from memory, 12 different policies. Two of the major ones are above ground and below ground infrastructure assets. That's where most of the work goes to make sure we provide the insurance broker with a complete list of what we want insured and the right insurable amounts. Other policies, vehicle, cyber, that they're a lot more straightforward. But the main two ones are the ones I mentioned, and we're in the process of compiling all that information now.
Okay. Okay. Part of the less. The indications where the premiums are going this year? Where's your crystal ball?
Yeah, it's interesting. Some, obviously, we've got 12 policies, and two I mentioned earlier, the bigger dollar amounts. You may be surprised to hear that some policies like cyber, the increase isn't as much as it has been historically in recent years. For whatever reason, they're predicting a softening market there.
Yeah.
And the other policies, we're obviously expecting an increase in premiums, but nowhere near the extent to which the last 2 or 3 years have been. It can change overnight, of course, but current advice is it won't be as dramatic as previous years.
Councillor Simon, then I've got Councillor Dave.
Just a question, 2.1.4, theft of the trailer from King Street depot, was that a break-in or was it during the day and it was left open or?
Mr. Bernardi might know that one.
Reply, there was a break-in over a weekend,
That's right.
somewhere over the weekend at night.
Councillor Dave.
Just quickly for your information, you may not be aware, but we, the last time that the insurance came up, the council formed a bit of a subcommittee and we spent a lot of work looking at this. So it's something that was trawled through pretty significantly a year or so ago.
Yeah, I remember that initial workshop with Aon. So.
There's been workshops with Aon where
Yeah.
myself and councils.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Went through excess levels and et cetera, et cetera.
Nothing further, okay, all right,
Dave's comments.
okay, thank you. So do I have a mover for the recommendation? Dave, seconder. Oh, I think it was councillor Picky by a pen this time, thank you. You and councillor Fee are in competition with each other. Yeah, I know, it's all right. All right, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Internal work program 9.6.
Thank you again. Another standard report just showing progress being made by officers going through a whole bunch, a range of different internal audit activities and reviews to show that we are ticking them off as we go through. A couple will drag into next financial year, and the elected member effectiveness one is still up for, I think, some sort of scoping.
Yep. Councillor Fee.
Just with staff turnover, I was looking at 0.4.4, and obviously we've had some training there or understanding that if those personalities have moved on, what's the catch-up process?
Good question, thank you.
Yeah, I can answer. Section 4.4, staff that attended that workshop are still here,
Right.
and they're proactively addressing that stuff.
The only added comment that I can make is generally people that are working in that area will be going through it. So when you have a staff member leaving, generally the ones that are coming into it are au fait with what's going on as well. Not always the case, but there is a training schedule that we go through with every staff member as to what they need to keep up with.
Thank you.
And if I may, Chair, just to expand on that. Look, these workshops are repeat workshops generally, they're not just once off done, because obviously the tax legislation changes, rules change. These workshops are held every 1 or 2 years. And we certainly encourage stuff, almost encourage, force the relevant staff to attend, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I actually appreciate the work that's been done, right? But in other councils, we actually see, as committees, see a bit of the outcome of the review, particularly the cybersecurity IT recovery plan, right? We see a bit of getting assurance as to what was actually done, what were the issues. Now, yes, some of that stuff you don't want to see in public, right? Because you don't want to expose what holes you've got in your firewall to all and sundry. But certainly, that to me would be give us some assurance, not for all the nitty gritty, but certainly a high level. This is what was done. This is who did it. Though you could have employed. No disrespect, I'm sure this wouldn't be the case. But if I was a cynical person, you could say you actually got the tea lady to review your cybersecurity, right? Probably the tea lady was actually probably appropriate. Tea ladies are actually well informed and hear all the goss and what's going on anyway. But to me, they're one of the most valuable staff members. But to me, the issue is it's actually having what was done, who did it, right? What were the issues, and when are they going to be fixed? I think that's really important. Like for example, 4.6. Consenting applications has been reviewed. No significant findings, but there were obviously some findings there. That to me would actually be really useful for the committee to actually gain some assurance that there has been a robust process. Mr. Chief Executive or Dave might want to comment on that.
I'm taking them one by one. So regarding cyber used to be a standing item on this agenda. And in PX, as you rightly say, the last meeting or the one before, we were asked to make it a 6-monthly submission. So not this meeting, but the next meeting there'll be.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you've said you've actually got the work's been completed, right?
Yeah.
It's.
Well, that specific one, it would have been included in the next agenda.
Okay.
Yeah. Consenting.
I don't think there's any issue with us giving a high level summary. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It gives a point of interest that councillors can engage with, and even if we have to take it offline.
Mirandy?
Yeah, a couple of comments. The first one is that an internal audit should pick up whether contracts were reviewed at the appropriate time. That's not always it.
Yeah.
So for instance, over the last few years, we've had a number of contracts that we've had to roll over.
Yep.
Because we haven't been in a position to be able to effectively deal with them through process. And the audit process should be picking up that sort of failure.
Yep, right. Good, really good point, right? So what to me is the way that should happen in terms of process is we've got on page 38, right? Currently, we've got the work plan. So what, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, Mayor Andy, right? Is what we should be doing is adding that process to that work program on the paper.
Halfway down, scheduled for next financial year is procurement and contract management. We're just finalising our new procurement and contract management policy. And part of that is the maintenance of establishment and maintenance of a contract register and lease register.
So that's happening in
next financial year,
24-25, which is actually next month. So it's
2 weeks away.
Yeah, 2 weeks away. So it's it's an A. So what I'm saying, it's an A priority. So that therefore will probably be one of the first things cabs off the rank. Is that what you're saying?
It's not so much timing wise, it's the formality of the review. So it's not just someone doing a desktop, it's actually getting stuck in. That the particular establishment of a contracts register will be a separate exercise, because I don't think we've got one that's particularly robust at the moment. So that will be something we're already started looking at.
Absolutely. It's just a comment too, is that this is an area that we have identified throughout our LTP processes, that some of the processes are possibly not as well identified and maintained, and we've actually created a position that will enable us to work our way through those. And it does seem to me that some good work has been done, but it's maintaining those processes and ensuring they're continued with. And so by identifying a particular resource that can be focused on getting them up to date, and then it's up to us to ensure that we've got the resources to maintain them. So I think there is quite a bit of work going into that area where it has been identified that some of the things that Mayor Andy and others have mentioned have slipped under the radar.
Just following on from that, one of the agenda items coming up later is ELT have sat down and all come up with our 5 key operational risks, and at least 2 or 3 of us identified the lack of a structured contracts register. So it's something we're proactively looking at.
So going forward on that, right? I'm just look at my calendar, and our next meeting is 18th of September, right? And this is a hospital pass you can pass on, Dave, right? To your successor, right? The landmine, yeah. That I would actually like to see, right? That you actually, as part of the years, the 24-25, is a bit more information on what you are doing in terms of each of the work program, in terms of what you're proposing. Like, for example, yes, we note that, procurement, right? We've got procurement, we've got accounts payable, we've got treasury management, you've got complaints handling, your capital work program, etc. A bit more detail of what actually is being proposed and how, what and when those will be done would be appreciated probably for the next meeting. So it's sort of a bit of an audit detailed plan. All right. Mayor Andy, did you have a comment about the next meeting, when it should be?
No, I was joking.
You're joking?
I was.
You were?
I think it needs to move on.
Sorry? What is D-Day?
The D-Day.
Your D-Day?
My last day here will be the 13th of September. I'm on leave just before that.
I'm actually on leave the week before that, but I am in the hood, in early August, so we can, bring it forward to the end.
I might be getting COVID that week.
We should have done all the work before anyway, right? Okay, enough flippancy from the chair. So we've got a recommendation there that we receive the internal works program. I'm happy to move, right? But just noting, how would I describe this, right?
I'll put it into the action items. if
Have
that
you?
helps.
Oh, thank you. All right, I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder?
Yes.
Mayor Andy, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried. 9.7, audit management letter, page 40.
Again, standard report, may I chair, just introduce it, talk to it. So standard report, members may be pleased to see that the number of active items is significantly lower than it was a year ago, 2 years ago.
And while they're still sitting there, they won't actually come off until we actually get the next letter from our very good friends, Audit New Zealand. Okay, any comments, questions? All right, we've got a recommendation there. Do I have a mover?
Move.
Councillor Dave, seconded. Councillor B. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. LTP engagement letter 9.8. Done and dusted, isn't it?
Yeah, We're fairly happy with the status of the LTP, subject to the final audit review now. What may be interesting coming out of the audit is they refer to in section 3.3 of their engagement letter, page 47 of the agenda, that they'll be looking at our control environment. I've not seen or heard of any of them discussions yet, so I don't know how deep that review is going to be. But from our point of view, that's the main value add part of the
Yeah.
audit.
So normally they will give you a management letter on terms of improvement. So at the moment, clarification, you've done all the hard work and it's currently with hot review?
Gone through hot review.
It's gone through hot review, it
Yeah.
passed hot review.
So we've had the unfortunate thing of receiving updated NZTA allocations. And so it required rework of all our budgets. And Dave's team's been doing that. We've now updated our LTP to reflect those new budgets. We've sent the updated version just as of yesterday. Audit are still confident that we can meet the adoption date of next week. So they're doing any finalised work on just, there's a few nitty gritty things to have a look at in terms of the NZTA budgets, but they're confident of getting us something. They don't see any big red flags, getting us their audit opinion in time. You know.
That,
It's been-
committee, you are the first, right? I've got a number that are actually having significant issues, and in fact, one council has brought me in as a facilitator to facilitate the discussions with audit.
It's a big, I think it is a big hit, to the LTP. And I mentioned to you earlier that, you know, the team took the hit from NZTA on the chin and did that work,
Yeah.
whereas a lot of others have, in my understanding, have stood their ground and said they're not prepared to do it. So I do think the team has worked particularly hard on this one, and we may still get challenged by audit, and it's been a difficult process, but yeah, we're pleased with where we're at.
You're probably lucky, I know, since we're public, we're very careful here, right? I've got some auditors going down some wrong rabbit holes.
We've had our
Been
share
down a
of
few
rabbit
as well.
holes.
This one is actually questioning whether their debt is actually too high and they should be cutting back their capital works program, which I think is outside of their scope of their remit. It's a policy decision, council's done, it's been disclosed in the LTP, the risks have been reported, and he's saying, I think you're doing too much, you need to look at it again. Which is a policy decision. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? But that's the, so, yeah?
To
Yeah.
Chair, I'd make a number of comments with regard to this letter. First of all, believe it or not, I think the actual cost of is within reason. About 103,000 a year. That's probably what we would come to expect, to be honest. Don't like it, expect it. That's point one. Point two was to thank staff. The review of the finance on roading has been a significant, so Dave, thank you to you and Warren and the team or whoever has done that work. It is substantial to reconfigure within a week out. However, having said that, I make the point that it only includes the money that has been changed around allocation with NZTA currently. What it doesn't bring into effect at all is the changes of policy around emergency road.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So conceivably, that will add another somewhere probably near 10 million. And depending on climatic event over the next 3 years, that will not qualify. That is an astronomical type of figure that will not be regarded in our LTP process at all.
Yep.
And how we deal with that when it occurs is beyond me at the moment. So that's the next part. And that is only one piece of legislation that is changing.
Oh. then I see that discussion under 9.11, because I've got some major concerns over that as well, right?
We made decisions not to audit our consultation document, which were the right decisions.
Yeah.
However, the letter of intent refers to it a number of times, saying that you had that right. However, we reserve the right to review.
Yep.
So effectively, we're going to be dragged into that process by audit to some extent, regardless.
Can I comment on that particular one?
Yep.
I've actually had one council, I won't name the council, that someone questioned whether their consultation document was adequate. Audit wouldn't be drawn on it and required the council to actually get a legal opinion. The legal opinion said it was compliant, and that was then given to audit, so there was no issue. But again, right, that's the risk. If you actually if you actually had a hot review, I would say you've passed the worst, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. But it's just signaling they're going to have another crack at us.
They should have had the crack by now, in my opinion. Right. Anything else?
So I'll let you go.
No. I've got two councillors.
Oh, so Joe, just, sorry, can you explain to me what's a hot review?
Oh, yeah, sorry, oops, what, yeah,
Sorry.
you can, no?
Basically, it's where a team of people come together and look at different parts of the long-term plan to see what legislative, as long as to see if we've met legislative requirements. It's probably better name would be like a high-level review.
Yeah.
So does it meet all those things that we have, that they would expect to see in it? So they do a hot review. From that, they pick up some small things that they ask for more information on. We continually provide feedback on those areas that they're asking for, and then they do like a once over of the full document, which is what they're actually doing now. So
That's
so it
part
is
of every LTP process.
It is.
Right,
So
thank you.
just clarification to just add something, right? I'll do another bit of that. So I know someone who's actually on the hot review team at the moment, right? So the hot review is done by our Office of the Auditor General. It's not done by Audit New Zealand, although there might be people from
there as
from there. The reason they do it is you've actually got different directors across the country. You've also got two other providers other than Audit New Zealand. So the purpose of the hot review is to ensure that there's consistency of LTPs across the country, irrespective of who the director has been. So Carol's 100% right? It's a high level, but they're looking at key consistency issues across the country to make sure they have been dealt with consistently across the country. So that NZTA issue, right? If the auditor says, oh, it's not material, right? The hot review team would have actually had to be given assurance from the director that it wasn't material and probably asked for further information as well. Councillor Simon?
Page 51, 4.4, and it's maybe too early a question. Delivering capital expenditure program, that's going to be one of the focuses for the audit team. Council's had a history of not delivering the capital program. Have they made any comment yet at all?
I can only say that I've been involved in the councils for something like 45 years, and I think every one of those 45 years they've made a comment. But I do think they do acknowledge realistically to project some of these long-term in terms of resource consenting and stuff like that. What they don't want to see is an extension of that where we are including work that can't be done in that period. So I don't think there has been anything specific for us this time around when they've been looking at it, other than to saying we're probably not going to complete the capital works.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in there that I've been made aware of that hasn't got the potential to be completed, providing things happen.
Can I give a real example, right? So I'm aware of some councils that have significantly lifted their capital works program. So the auditor has asked the question of the chief executive, Mr. Chief Executive, last year you delivered 20 million, and now you are projecting to deliver 40 million. What have you changed in your organisation to deliver 40 million every year? So the answer was, we've actually employed another, as part of our LTP process, we have got budgeted extra project managers to deliver those projects. That's what we're looking for. That's what's
My next
changed in
sort of
your
comment was,
organisation.
You have got capacity to deliver that program.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's been several projects that have been sitting around for several years that this council's already said, yes, go, do it.
So that's been the topic of quite lengthy discussions with,
Yeah.
in particular with Arno and the audit team. And so long as within the document you explain where you're at in the process and why you're continuing to keep the budget as it is or increasing it, then audit are relatively happy. And a lot of it is around the consenting timeframes. So we might have started this much, but we still require the project budget to be in place for the next 10 years. But we're stepping along the process, and Arno's had to provide a lot of detail around the status and the what's the word we use? The confidence level around it. Yeah, and they've been comfortable with that approach.
Just very quickly, just this issue of the NZTA, was that put in and adjusted before the hot review, or is that coming after the hot review?
It came in just as they were about to undertake the hot review. So then they came to us and said, we're aware you've been given indicative allocations from NZTA, so please rework your budgets and then we'll do the hot review. So we did it that way. Yeah.
So there's a risk that it could be, of course.
They've
Or
come
you-
back today asking for a bit more clarification in terms of the actual budgets that the finance team put together. So we give them to them in a high level financial impact statement, and they want to review the actual Excel spreadsheets, for want of a better word, to make sure that those marry up. So I think there's a level of confidence with that. There might be a couple
So
of
there's
other
not,
areas.
I'm hearing level of confidence, there's nothing sitting back there, you go, ooh,
No, not
no,
that.
okay, good, thank you.
Mayor Andy?
Audit tends to look at these things largely through a financial lens. And through a financial lens, that reduction in funding effectively will improve our cash position. And that makes it look good. What it doesn't tell the story is the level of service that we're providing to a community. So it depends, what aspect that you are particularly looking at as to how you're reporting on it. But I'll just make the next comment is around, there's a fair chunk of the document that refers to consultation. And the most critical thing that's happening to us at the moment is the Three Waters, where the government has legislated to say that you don't have to consult. So that removes consultation potentially with iwi, with our communities.
Exactly.
I just wanted to make a comment and thank you, Carol, for the explanation that you've just given around, here's the project starting, but here's how we look at it over a period of time. And for me, that's just you saying it just gives assurance that, and I have huge confidence in our team. But it just that little comment was, again, Arno's going to be able to feedback, and I just wanted to acknowledge that comment.
Okay. Thank you. Good discussions. Well, we've sort of got off the subject of the engagement letter. I think it's actually relevant, right? All right, and I know was significant delay in getting, technically the engagement letter should have actually been issued in early February. Yeah, we know why.
We keep asking for it.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't give it because they were uncertain of the impacts of the Three Waters until the legislation was actually passed. Thank you very much. Right, so we've got a recommendation there. Do I have a mover? I'm happy to move. Seconded. I think it was Councillor Dave by a whisker. All right, all those in favour, please say aye. Everything's carried. Fraud reporting 9.8. No, 9.9, what am I doing? 9.9. Big report, Dave.
I think much needs to be said about this.
So nothing, take it as read. Any questions?
Happy to move receipt.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Next item, 9.10.
So this is again a standard report, is debt related. Last meeting I was asked to change the focus as opposed to it being complying with our borrowing covenants, to have a more of a future view on the world. And I think it's good to point out that our LTP, albeit draft, shows that our plans can be afforded through debt, debt ceilings and debt limits. Based on what we currently know, will accommodate our spending plans, but I will draw attention to section 4.4 on page 62. Items we've already spoken about, and the mayor spoke about it. It just needs a large emergency event that's not in the LTP because they can't be. We don't know when they're going to happen or what extent, and what financially what that's going to do to us, we don't know. And there are other variables moving forward that can impact our debt position, as there are for all councils.
Yep.
Take questions.
Any questions on our debt?
Just one little quick one on that, and it's possibly not for this forum, but maybe at a general council. forum. Can we future fund for these events if we're going to be, if we've got a belief that we're going to come up short with the inevitable and reduction in funding from NZTA, can we fund that? What impact that would have?
Short answer is yes. The how is the question. But basically our debt limits in the LTP do give us a buffer that we've set aside, not in cash terms, but in debt accessibility terms. But that might not be enough in a big event. The only other way you could set aside funds is by getting a rate up and putting that rate in a separate bank account. I don't think that would be particularly.
I don't know. I just wonder if it's something that's prudent for thought at some stage to actually give some consideration to it, because if we're going to be $10 million shy somewhere along the line, we need to keep our ahead of the fact that we could need that quickly.
Yeah. Can I just answer that from a technical perspective, right? What I always look for, right, in terms of debt is your headroom, right? So that here is the maximum debt we can actually have. Here's your knowing limit at the moment, and how much headroom, because that, particularly with LGFA covenants, LGFA are very flexible in terms of being able to now raise funds at the short term, providing you've got a facility with, you've got a good relationship. So you could get $5 or $6 million almost. I saw one council that was subject to the cyclone got 11 million literally overnight because they needed it. But it's actually having those processes in place that allows that, rather than actually, because hopefully you'll never need it. Mayor Andy.
You're on the same path as I am. So you take Cyclone Gabrielle and you take a position like Wairau, for instance, was in.
Yep.
What effectively happens is they then go, there's an event, and they go to government and say, we do not have headroom to be able to cope with this. And historically, governments had to step in. And so the whole changes of emergency funding, etc., is probably, and to some extent, academic. Somebody has to take responsibility somewhere. But the question of headroom will become the relevant conversation with government.
Yep. Can I just talk about Wairau, because I sit on the Audit and Risk Committee, right? Well, it was very well that government promised the money. The money wasn't actually forthcoming straight away, and they're still arguing over money. I know Hawke's Bay Region was still arguing over helicopter flights that were requested by ministers that NEMA are refusing to pay. Okay, so the councillor, so Simon, then councillor.
Just a comment that our Catholic position, we keep about $10 million, $11 million in the bank anyway, and that's an available fund. It will upset the covenants with LG and GFA. But there is room there within our current.
Oh, well, I'm shaking my head this way only because even with the headroom that you talk about at 30 million, you talk about that 10 million, some of these events, take it up, drop of a hat, and you'll never get, Mary Andy's always saying about the standard eroding going down, but the moment that happens, you might do some work in that headroom capacity, but you're never going to bring it back to that standard. So your point, I wasn't saying that you're wrong. I think you're right, but the reality of the cost of it, we just can't cope with.
Yeah. And I'm aware of one council that had an event, 15 years ago. They still haven't recovered their funds.
Yeah, even when raising the question, $10 million really is a drop in the ocean to some of the extent of the damage that can occur in these things. But I think it's just something that we need to be mindful of when we're looking at our infrastructure builds and where we're predicting things and where we sit with our LTP plans and things. If we look at our scales, we see every now and again we get a little bit close to it.
Yeah.
But we do need to be mindful that these things will happen. So we just perhaps keep it at the forefront of our mind that we might need that headroom for something else, and it might not be a new park. It might be something far more important.
Mary Andy.
Who are we broadcasting to?
That's public.
The changes in government position at the moment, for instance, the changes that have just been announced by the minister around earthquake buildings. And he's come out and said he doesn't believe that earthquake buildings should be strengthened or necessarily strengthened. These are far-reaching comments that government ministers are making. And councils have acted on the information and legislation that's been provided for a long time. And we may have to go back and say, irrespective of change, we continue to upgrade our buildings as required in terms to cover ourselves for what will be a legislative change.
Yep.
Just make a concluding comment. This paper here talks about LTP debt, and just want to point out that even though the LTP shows that we can accommodate our debt, I think we all are aware from years 4 or 5 onwards, give or take, the Three Waters reforms mean all the figures are academic.
Yeah. I just want to talk about the government policy and the change for that roading, right? They're saying a 1 in 10 year event and 1 in 10 year. I hate those terms. Because 1 in 10 year is actually a 10% chance, and it can actually happen 10 years in a row, right? And the same with, right? So the issue to me is it's the cumulative impact, right? And we mentioned Wairua before. They've actually had 3 events over the last 5 years that have actually been greater than 1 in 50.
Gisborne has had 17.
I know Gisborne's had, so, so you can see why government are pulling back because they're running out of money, but, I don't like the term 1 in 10 year because it actually is quite misleading to everybody. It's a 10% chance of it happening. All right. Right, enough any further discussion on council debt? Can I have a mover that we receive the report? Councillor Vicky.
I get the pen.
You get the pen, you got the pen. Councillor Simon, all those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Last item in open. ELT. Dave or the Chief Executive?
I'll pick it up.
Dave?
That's okay. So as you'll be aware, each meeting we generally have a strategic risk dive. We took the liberty this time of changing that approach slightly to say rather than do a strategic risk deep dive, and if you can remember, we've got 12 on our 12 risks in our strategic risk register. One of them talked about business continuity, etc. So what ELT are currently doing is each of us are looking at our 5 key risks and collectively going through them to see how we mitigate, how we understand each other's risks. So this is just showing you the exercise we're going through. It's not been completed yet. So just for your information, I think that the summary on pages 64 and 65. So to a large extent operationally, what's the key risks are for each of our different portfolios. And we started off key risk number one. By default, we said we want to look at key person reliance. So yeah, just to show you that we're going through this process and we'll be workshopping it and looking how we can cross mitigate some of our relevant risks. And in there, you'll see several references to lease and contract management, key staff retention we've spoken about earlier. So a lot of the issues we spoke about recently are actually listed on here.
Just before we carry on, right?
Mhm.
The mayor made a really good idea that we actually consider our top ones. Now, we've been going almost an hour and a half. We want to take a 5-minute recess now, adjourn for 5 minutes. The council is also to refresh their water bottles, right? But also consider what are their top 5 and then we'll reconvene. So we adjourn for 5 minutes, based on your list. Based on your list, what's keeping you awake? Okay?
Yes, you're on.
Right, okay, thank you. Right, carry on, Mr. James.
Yeah, so this paper is really not to go through in any great detail unless you've got questions. It was just to show you that ELT are going through this exercise of identifying respective key operational risks. They could argue some drift into strategic, and that we're going through them together, because there will be some cross-departmental mitigation strategies.
Right, questions, councillor Simon and councillor Fee.
Oh, no question, but I found that very helpful. And I thought it just made me understand a little bit more about how you're operating as an ELT team and how you're thinking, and I thought it was good. Thank you.
Right,
Yeah, I thought it was good to see as well, found it really helpful. What came up in my mind was, I didn't see anywhere there, anyone thinking about the timeliness of information and the effect of that on decision making. I don't know if that's, I thought that was a risk, but maybe no one else does.
okay,
If you look at mine, my number 2 risk is precisely that, councillor. For my team to,
What, you're,
so on page 64,
yeah, you're calling it
insufficient
corporate
collaboration
services.
between different teams. Yeah.
it's called corporate punishment.
Okay, thank you.
All right, councillor Picky.
Yeah, so just my comment, just to, to support, councillor Loudon and also, Fee. I too agree that it's really good. What's good to me is that people are sitting in here, when you've just identified, Fee, what you thought would be in there. People are coming from a specific point of view. And I think this would be a useful process to be put across all councillors, to be honest. To get an understanding of that. And saying that I've only come up with 3 at this very time.
Okay.
May I ask the CE in just a couple of sentences, what he would like to see more around the alignment and the strategic thinking, the ELT, what's his vision there?
I just think we just need to be closer and get some, I do think we've been working on the trust between the two, which is great, and then working together on that sort of stuff. So that once you go, I did think I had iwi and governors in there, because I do think it's like a package deal of collaboration and working together.
Thank you.
Councillor Picky.
What, somebody's gonna tell me it is in here, but, so there's the alignment between staff and governors, because in my head, governors are the ones that are giving the strategic direction. And your staff are the people that bring it into operation. Whereas this sits within it, or I would ask where the core voice sits within it.
My understanding is that that is still being directed by the governors. And that's why that again is part of what my focus was, is that all needs to be worked through together. We understand that you set the direction, we understand that we do stuff within it, but we need to be part of it to give you all of that information and advice. If you choose to go a different direction, we have to respect that. But the closer you are in alignment and understanding one another, the better off you are. And so that, my understanding, I wasn't here when that was developed, but my understanding is that it was generated from the council. Yeah.
Can I just carry on with that?
Sure.
So I totally agree with that. There is that alignment between your governors and your the strategic thinking of it all, and also your operations. Because in my head, when you've got something like that, which is in my head, that's our strategic plan going. That's what our strategic plan is. The minute we step out and we're doing things that aren't in alignment with that, we are on the wrong path.
We all agree.
Yeah. So that's That's probably, I was just thinking that after what you was talking about, the alignment thing, and that's our guiding principle until it gets changed.
I just want
Okay,
to
yeah,
comment
sure,
on it.
sure.
Through the development of that, we got your strategic priorities, and then obviously everything cascades down. The next stage with this is to actually include it in each council report so that we will show where these key decisions or key things that we're bringing to you, how they align with that. And if they don't align, then we will be asking you, do you want to do this? Because it doesn't align with anything that you've set the direction on. So that style report will be coming from July onwards.
You want my three? No?
No, so any other question, any other? Thanks for that. Now, that just prompted me, right? Thank you for that comment. One of the things too is we're not really, the risk is a journey, not a destination. So I'm really pleased to see that we're actually having this discussion. One thing that I would be really keen to see is we've got our strategic direction, right? So if you look at, I'm going to really be technical for a minute and I'll come back. So risk is about uncertainty over your objectives. So your strategic direction is your key objectives, right? And is there, I'm looking at Carol, who's sort of is there some way we can actually look as a committee, these are our strategic objectives. What are the strategic risks in achieving those objectives? Might be a bit early in the process, but maybe that's where you probably want to. So we're talking, this committee is talking at the high level of these are the strategic risks and how then do they marry up with the operational risks. But also you've got to think about, in terms of risks, you've got to think about, we just talked about emerging risk, significant legislative change since basically October last year. In the first 100 days, there was a massive amount. And I see that my crystal ball is saying that this current coalition government is on a mission to achieve a whole lot in the first 18 months. And then most cynical view is the next 18 months they'll slow down and start being nice because there's an election coming up. Right? So that to me, right? Right? So at the moment, what I'm seeing is that while we think we've got a tsunami, that tsunami of change is actually likely to increase before it decreases. So, we've got operational, we've got our, hopefully coming our strategic, but then we've got all these emerging risks coming over the horizon as well. How do we actually manage it, and talk about those in a strategic way?
I think not to be too simplistic, but we've got detailed risks, which you have seen in front of you before. Legislation is actually included in one of those. I think it's under my area. But I think what we need to do with the second stage is that Dave talked about, the ELT now needs to do the next step with that. And I think incorporating those strategic risks, but keeping the core fight as part of those so that they actually have some form of marrying up together is probably the best way to do it with the ELT in our workshop that Dave's going to bring to us.
Okay. Right.
There you go.
Councillor Simon.
I'll just like to thank Councillor Hero for bringing my attention again to the COFI, and I'm very pleased to see that reporting will be in alignment with that framework. I think it's what we need to get back into as a group.
Right. So Mayor Andy has created his list of what's keeping him awake at night. Do you want to share some of those with the committee?
Yeah, I haven't focused on strategic direction because for me, the risks are being able to achieve what you've set out to do. So I think the fundamentals are there. But what keeps me awake at night, in order of priority, if you like, is one, affordability. We can price ourselves out of having people in our district.
Yep.
Two, this next one is quite specific and it's roading. It's the state of what our network will look like over the next 5 years. Number 3 is the speed of government change and our ability as a sector to understand the implications and respond. Number 4, I'm more relaxed about now in terms of some of us was thinking prior to that, was compliance with best practice. I think we deviated from that to a substantial degree, and that's the one that effectively could see us in a court position. Next one is one of succession. You know, we're going to have to go through within the next year or so a succession program of a chief executive, mayor, and council. The next one for me is the staffing and the ability to resource and be able, you know, for instance, if we go into roading contracts, alliance models in particular, the success of that will be determined by having the people to be able to deliver. And us aligned, and I'll stop half this one, aligned to one, is the survivability of some of our key industries. So, you know, we have, and I'm certainly not going to go talking about particular industries in line, but they're up against it. And, you know, and a general classification is the agricultural sector. There's a lot of people struggling. A lot of companies are struggling. That's what keeps me awake at night.
Okay. Councillor Fee?
I wrote down, just how we are operationalising this shared service back into RDC. I'm not clear in my mind what the costs or savings of that might be directly to our council. The roading contract, it's our biggest contract. What does a network look like? And this 1 year interim contract that we're seeing us tied over. And, you know, thirdly, you know, what is future amalgamation look like? What do we need for that, especially with regards to a build?
Yep.
And are we progressing building those relationships fast enough?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pickey?
My 3 are ability to service community need, the retention of staff and institutional knowledge, but also elected members who have the knowledge. So that's just picking up on what the mayor had talked about with succession. And the 3rd one I've got is legislative changes and how that affects us all.
Okay.
For me, which has flipped around, it's always been infrastructure, but that's now number 2. And the reason that's number 2 is I agree with the mayor, it's about affordability. And I don't think that conversation is really being heard on high as to just how do we pay for it. So I've got affordability as first, infrastructure as second. And the 3rd one, which is a newcomer to the table, is actually our overall relevance in future entities and where do we have a local voice in our priorities? And I think that is actually quite a big concern to me. What does the future look like? Because we don't know, but we run a risk of being lost somewhere. That's it with me.
Thank you. Councillor Simon?
Thank you, they're all very good. In no particular order, the economic slowdown, I think, is relevant around the whole country, particularly relevant here, and that concerns our local economy, which then concern the council. I think poor decision making is something that needs to be or has been worked on considerably. I think that and that sort of segues into the mayor's comments regarding the councillors and staff having the right talent retention and the next stages of the changes within council. Climate change, I think, is going to be a big one because it will impact on everything the council does. And if we do get an event, it's going to be, you know, a huge shift for this council. Thank you.
You do. My top three, right? Is per that sort of semi-report, but I didn't prioritise them, right? I think it's affordability, right? We've actually got, right, with the rate increases I see around the countryside, it scares the living daylights out of me. We've actually got various entities, both, so the Reserve Bank saying we've got to cut our spending, but he's increasing our interest rates, right? We've got to deliver essential services. So in conjunction with that, you can't cut your water services because we've now got a regulator who will take action against us, right? We can't cut our road and you can't cut services overnight. Is it? No, that's what central government technically want us to do. Whether they actually understand the long-term consequences of doing that are horrendous for the community. You just need to look at what happened in the UK when they had austerity through their local government spending. They've never caught up. So,
Simon sent a report through on that to us all.
yeah. The other issue is that the big one to me is the inconsistent standards and the compliance that's been required of local authorities. The emerging, well, it's actually not emerging risk. You're lucky as a council that you haven't had a significant leaky home or leaky building. You are not at fault, but because of contract arrangements, you are the last person standing, and you've had to fork out tens of millions of dollars. And I've seen that, where the council relied on an expert engineer, the expert engineer failed, and it cost the council $26 million because the contract that the building owner had with the contracting engineer limited their liability to 6 months after the event and to 10 times the amount of the contract price. Okay, so but because council is the last person standing, there was clearly a fault, but there was basically council, you pay. So that to me, there needs to be significant change if we're to see costs decreasing, and you see that with the ability now for some councils to get professional indemnity insurance. That we thought leaky homes have been consents are the next cap off the rank. So there's a whole sorts of stuff changing where council will be actually carrying that down. So those are mine, right? We live in very interesting times.
Interesting that we're ticking some similar boxes here.
We have, yes. And it would actually be very nice actually if somehow the chief executive could actually sort of think about how we merge the strategic, or Karen or someone, I'm giving because he's the only employee, right? How we actually then say is how do all those risks actually articulate for the Rangitikei district? I'm not saying council, I'm saying for the district. Councillor Day.
Move receipt of the report, Chair.
Absolutely. Got a second. Thank you, Councillor Pickey. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Can I have a move that we move into public excluded? Oh, Councillor Simon, Councillor Pickey. All those in favour, please say aye. We've got the minutes of 20th of March. Oh, I better than too quick. Sorry. Slow down, Philip.